Previously at Laura B. Studios.
Ultraman Arc actually finished just a few days before I started filming this video, and I do wonder what this list would look like if it had finished sooner. It genuinely felt like Tsupro had a bug in my walls and designed a series to make me go insane. And it worked. So yay. And then, I watched the new season of Ultraman and I loved it so much. Ultraman Arc, I don't think anything is ever going to be able to top that as my favorite Ultra because they had a bug in my walls. They designed it to make me go insane. Hi everyone, my name is Laura B, aka Twitter user at ytikitaze, which you probably already know if you're watching this video, and I'm a firm believer in randomly starting shows because it hasn't steered me wrong so far. I randomly started Kamen Rider Revice, and now I'm the guy who's married to Igarashi Iki and will defend him with my entire life. I randomly started Garo, and now a virus named Jinga lives in my brain and makes me think about Terrible Yaoi. I randomly started Denji Sentai Mega Ranger, and I realized that I remember a lot more episodes of Power Rangers in space than I thought I did. And on July 10th of last year, just a few days after its premiere, I randomly started Ultraman Arc. What I expected was Ultraman. At the time, I'd only seen Shin Ultraman, Olive Blazer, and about 6 episodes of Orb, and I sort of just wanted to see what everyone was talking about. I saw reports of unique fights and general hype, and I was like, okay, sure. Now, I have a son. His name is Yuma, and yes, I did adopt him, don't ask me questions. I was glued to my TV on Friday nights, to the point that I changed my work schedule to make sure I'd never miss an episode. Arc hooked me to the point that I have more published fanfiction of Yuma and Shu than I do of Emu and Hiro from Xaid, who are my OTP. Hell, Arc somehow led me to making a fake BL trailer that's gotten more views than anything else I've ever made, and also, Ultraman Connection themselves saw it, so that's one of the things that's ever happened to me. It's not just about the ship though, although it is because man, they stick a god-tier workplace BL in here. Arc's characters, Arc's themes and messages, the aesthetic of the show itself, the music, the armor, there isn't a single thing in this show that I dislike. It's the most fun I've had watching Toku Live since King Oger, and it is very, very easily my favorite tokusatsu show of 2024. Arc is a show about imagination, about surviving, and about how important it is to learn to understand other people, but more than that, it's a show about healing, and it's genuinely beautiful to me. So, before we get into me telling you all about my son like the extremely proud mom I am, let's get a few things out of the way. Firstly, this video will contain spoilers, like a lot of them probably. If you want to watch Arc blind, feel free to pause this video, watch Arc on the official Ultraman YouTube channel and check out the movie through your local library in Hoopla, and then form your own opinion before you come back to mine. Secondly, speaking of opinions, this one is mine. But I am just one guy, and a guy who hasn't watched as much Ultra as I have the likes of Sentai and Rider. For all I know, praising Arc could go over like if I'd said a single criticism of Kamen Rider Geats. But just be cool, and normal, even if you disagree, and none of us will have any problems here. And if you do hate Arc, I don't get that, remotely honestly, but I'm not making this video to change your mind. I just want to blabber about something I love because I love it. So, with all of that in mind, let's dive, Yume Power, into why I loved Ultraman Arc.
So, what is Arc about anyway?
Before we get into the why, here's a quick recap of Arc's story just so that we're all on the same page. Ultraman Arc is the story of Yuma, a 23-year-old kaiju biologist who lives in Hoshimoto City. 16 years ago, Yuma lost his parents on a day known as K-Day, where kaiju sprung up worldwide. Yuma, however, survived, thanks to a giant of light we'll be learning more about later, though at the time, nobody believed him. With only his father's watch and last words to remember his parents by, Yuma studied kaiju and started working for the Scientific Kaiju Investigation and Prevention Center, or SKIP, to make sure others don't have to suffer like he did. With him at SKIP are Chief Bon Hiroshi, dog enjoyer and former dinosaur kid, Rin, the electrical engineer, and Yuppie, the robot mascot that it's genuinely impossible not to love. On Yuma's first day of work, there's a kaiju incident. When he realizes his grandmother might be in danger, he rushes to make sure she's alright, and falls into the mirror world as one does. Instead of facing a battle royale, however, Yuma finds the giant of light that saved him as a child looking exactly like Yuma's drawings of him. Moments later, Yuma's gained the ability to transform into him. By the time of Arc's first episode, Yuma's been in the Giant of Light business for 3 months. The giant is christened Ultraman Arc by local coffee-loving homosexual Ishido Shu, an agent of the Global Defense Force's Space Science Division who's assigned to the Hoshimoto branch of SKIP. After many adventures, including a first date, Pikachu, did I mention that the chief is played by the Red and Abba Ranger, xenophobia, motherhood, VTubing, Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar, Another Zeo, Divorce Parts 1 and 2, and Clip Show, we learned that Ultraman Arc has a real name. It's Rution, and he's on Earth for a reason. See, the sun in his galaxy is about to go supernova, causing billions of life forms to die. One such life form, Zesu, created a solution called the Zesu Gate that would yeet said supernova's energy into random places in space, so that their galaxy would be saved. The thing is, one of the planets that got chosen for this honor also has billions of life forms living on it, including you and me. Rution came to Earth on K-Day to try to save it. The Zesu Gate is why kaiju activity has been so frequent in Hoshimoto, and Shu came to SKIP in the first place to monitor it for the GDF, who call it the Onyx. And much like several other dams, this one is on the verge of breaking. After affirming his bond with Yuma and his love for humanity, however, Arc unleashes his imagination, turning the Onyx into his new armor. We have several more adventures, including Divorce 2, We Love You Zangel, Getting Yeeted into Blazer, Getting Yeeted by Blazer, Laura is weak to father-daughter content, Too Good by Takano Akira flavored Yuri, Hizeyuma is gay, and what if someone made Ame no Furanai Hoshi de wa Aisanai Daro by Morning Musume and turned it into an episode of Ultra Q before the endgame begins? The Onyx is still inside Yuma thanks to Arc turning it into a cube, and that means that Zesu and his enforcer, Swede, can not only track him, but also pump toxins into his body. This physical weakness means Yuma can't get out on the field when the kaiju of the week shows up, though of course that doesn't stop him, especially since the kaiju is targeting him specifically. For a moment, all seems hopeless. The kaiju in question traps Yuma in his imagination by showing him dreams of worlds where his parents are alive, and he nearly slips. But thanks to Rution being Yuma's dad one more time, Yuma breaks free, kicks ass, and saves the world. He then says his goodbyes to SKIP. They're family to him, but he's got another family member who still has to deal with his son exploding. After proposing marriage to Shu, which is to say, giving Shu his father's wristwatch to take care of, Yuma leaves Earth with Rution. Rest assured though, 3 months later, the SKIP phone rings because Yuma's home. Now, this being Ultraman, there's also stuff like Arc the Live, Tsubcon, and whatever Arc's crossover with Omega may end up being if we get one. That said, boy loses his parents in kaiju disaster, bonds with a giant of light over it. Imagination, gay people, shenanigans, pain, hope, love, Ultraman.
So how am I going to talk about this?
Because this video and my last video are in the same series, and because this is now a series, this means that I have the ability to recycle its structure. Well, kind of. I'll be recycling it, and then adding a secret sixth thing, which won't be a secret anymore when I tell you what it is. So don't worry about it. Like I said, I haven't seen as much Ultraman as I have Rider, but I still want to talk about the writing of Arc. The atmosphere it creates for itself is really unique, even from my admittedly limited perspective. It makes some really interesting, really clever choices with how it chooses to tell its story, and I want to explore those. Then we'll move on to the themes. Arc is incredibly thematically rich, and in ways that you might not realize on the surface. We'll be talking about Arc and imagination, obviously, but also what Arc says about healing from trauma and the varying ways a person can do that. From there, we'll hit the characters. Obviously, I have the most to say about Yuma and Shu, but despite Arc's limited amount of episodes and small cast, everyone gets their moment to shine. Everyone at SKIP is fantastic, and even the one-off characters get some really strong moments. It makes the world Arc is in feel well realized and interesting. Then we'll go to the music, which is really mostly going to be me breaking down the lyrics to Arc's opening and ending themes. Arcana Project, who did set ending themes, are my favorite J-pop girl group and have been for several years, so I also really want to plug them at the same time, but also y'all know me and my known J-pop lyrics geekery. From there, we'll go to the suits and the action. I know that within the wider Ultra context, Arc really stands out for being unique, but even without that, I thought Arc's fight scenes were really cool and his armors are just gorgeous. So that's where that goes, all you action enjoyers out there. And lastly, we'll be talking about the ship. Now, I've foojoed out on this channel before. Y'all have seen me talk about Ren Shinji, and Banana Orange, and whatever the hell the impactors from Grand Caesar have going on. And it's all in good fun, of course. You can interpret any relationship however you want, especially in fiction. But Yuma and Shu have a romance arc that feels straight out of a BL, I'm not even kidding. And because that relationship is so central to ARC, I want to talk about it. As far as research goes, I did watch ARC while it aired, and I've rewatched all of it many, many times since then. I've also seen the movie multiple times, read a lot of magazine articles and interviews, as well as every one of Ichido Shu's diary entries, except the one that came with the Japanese Blu-ray release of the movie because I do not own that yet. I've also watched a lot of behind-the-scenes content from the Blu-rays, every iteration of ARC the Live, and all of Yuma's ARC Navi videos, and a lot of interviews with the cast and crew from around when the movie came out. Admittedly, I often feel like there's something I'm missing with ARC. Something I just haven't managed to grasp despite all of that. In fact, that's one of the reasons that this video didn't come out right after my Ryuki essay. And like I said, I'm no ultra expert. There are things I praise ARC for that could be totally wrong. But at the very least, I have a pretty concrete grasp on what it is I definitely know. So, let's start with the writing.
The writing.
Now, even without going into ARC with a huge knowledge base, I knew from the beginning that it made some choices that separated it from other entries in the Ultra series. Overall, the vibe is just softer, down to the way it's shot. Its soft colors and that filter give the whole thing a kind of dreamlike atmosphere. It's why I was so edge of my seat when the finale rolled around. When Yuma was being told that the last 16 years were a dream, I believed it, because ARC had done an excellent job of feeling like it was one. And adding to that dreamlike atmosphere is the fact that Skip aren't a military force. Shu is their only guy that actually has weapons on him at any given time, and the rest of Skip are scientists. And Yuppie. I live in Colorado, which you may or may not know already, and Skip reminds me less of SCARD, or any other Ultraman military acronym, and more of the folks over at the National Center for Atmospheric Research, or NCAR. Much like Skip, it's NCAR's job to study stuff like weather and the atmosphere, so that we know when things like floods or tornadoes are on the way. Skip is the same thing, except with kaiju and not the weather. And really, especially on rewatch, I feel like ARC does a good job of making kaiju seem less like monsters and more like a part of nature. Yuma's backstory flashbacks, including the fact that his parents were buried under rubble, bring to mind what happens during earthquakes, for example, and Skip's job being to minimize casualties and help with evacuations during kaiju incidents makes them seem more like first responders than anything else. And the kaiju themselves aren't all threats. In episode 7, for example, all Homgar wants is to safely be able to give birth. The spirit that accompanies her even says that humans, too, are given life through their mothers. In the movie, the whole first chunk is about Yuma learning the lesson that a future where humans and kaiju coexist is possible, namely through playing with a very large and elderly dog. It's also through making Skip non-military that Shu is such a good audience surrogate, both for people who are new to Ultraman and for people who expect standard Ultraman. He's just as confused as the viewers are in episode 1, when he finds out that Skip doesn't face kaiju with weapons, and his quick adaptation to how Skip operates as opposed to the GDF, as well as the friction that occasionally causes, makes for some great conflict too. Something else that adds to ARC's soft and dreamy vibe is its setting. I love it when tokusatsu shows are about a town, because it's such an easy way to flesh out character backgrounds and growth. In Gaim, for example, Zawame and how it's changed thanks to Yggdrasil is a huge part of Mai and Kaito's storylines, and Futo is the perfect setting for Double, because it's a bustling city full of cases to solve and people with problems. Hoshimoto is described in Shu's diary as a town with an old-school Japanese feel, and that sort of old-fashioned atmosphere lends itself to ARC. The sort of everyone-knows-everyone vibe really gives the impression of a community being tight-knit, and really grateful to the people who helped protect them from kaiju. Episode 4 shows this with Rin, who's basically a Hoshimoto native at this point, and in Shu's diary, it's mentioned that he gets extra food and, in episode 16, a whole helmet because people know he's working with Skip. And as a person who knows exactly how a community comes together after a disaster, I can say they got that right. Hell, just thinking about K-Day as a world-building tool, it's such an easy way to distinguish ARC's world from the ones in the Ultra shows that came before it. There are probably in-universe documentaries about kids born on K-Day, or sad Facebook posts from losers about how K-Day was faked and the government is lying to us about the kaiju. I'm just saying, in a world like ARC's, you can do a lot thanks to that one little writing choice. And the existence of organizations like Skip just makes so much sense. Of course, in a world where kaiju attacks are like really frequent natural disasters, you'd have people researching them as much as you'd have people shooting at them. Stuff like the existence of the illegal kaiju parts trade, which is mentioned in episode 9, would absolutely spring up in a world where they're commonplace, because if there is a resource, it will be exploited under capitalism. Now, if you watched my last video, you'll know that I praised Gaim for being serialized. Arc is different. It's episodic because most Ultraman is episodic, but at the same time, those isolated incidents still come together to create a larger narrative. The question, why is Hoshimoto such a kaiju magnet, comes into play in episode 1, and we know that Shu's hiding something from Skip as of the end of episode 2. Even though the answers to those questions aren't revealed until episodes 14 and 15, those mysteries are still mentioned just enough to keep them in your head for when the big reveal comes. Even the fact that the energy from the Onyx is just gone after Arc uses it to create his galaxy armor ends up having actual stakes. It's not a throwaway line from Shu, but something that sets up the fact that the Onyx is still inside of Yuma. Those seemingly isolated incidents coming together to affect the overall plot is what episodic tokusatsu should be, in my opinion. It's very clever. Another thing I think is structurally interesting about Arc is the fact that the movie doesn't take place after the series. It's an interquill, if you will, because director Tsujimoto knew that Arc was complete as is. For one thing, that's smart because it removes the possibility of post-canon tokusatsu content that ruins absolutely everything. The film, down to the way that it's structured like 3 mini-episodes, doesn't change anything from the series. It just makes the episodes that take place after it hit different in retrospect. It also means that you can watch all of Arc in one sitting without having to worry about loose ends or story threads left unsnipped. Tsujimoto mentioned in an interview with Animate Times that he wanted the Arc movie to feel like a reward for those who watched the series, and as someone who watched the series, it does feel like a reward. And speaking of things that you don't necessarily need to seek out to get a full picture of Ultraman Arc, I really love Shu's diary entries as a world and character building tool. The extra information about the kaiju in them is nice, and it's really cute that all of Arc's form and weapon names are from him and Yuma thinking of them together. Having this insight into his personal thoughts, be they professional, gay as hell, or fanfiction about his coworkers, doesn't just build Shu and his perspective, but the entire world around him. There are so many small character details stored in there that do so much to enhance the characters, like how Yuma doesn't have any hobbies, or how Rin's part of a sewing circle, but at the same time, if you're only a casual Arc head, you don't need to know those things to enjoy Arc fully. It is, however, a really nice bonus thing for all of us weird geeks out there. But before I wrap this section up with a smooth segue, there's one more thing about Arc's writing that really makes it stand out to me. It's not without its moments of heated drama between men, don't get me wrong. Episodes 6 and 11 sure exist, and in them the characters have arguments. That said, they don't have full-on shouting matches or anything, and when characters need to apologize to each other, they apologize. It feels peaceful in a way that a lot of tokusatsu kind of isn't by nature. The characters are straightforward with each other without sliding into rudeness or crossed boundaries. It's realistic, because most people aren't always grabbing each other by the collar and yelling all the time, which fits with Arc's very peaceful and calm worldview. You can tell from the way they speak to each other that they care about each other, and that they trust each other. And speaking of that smooth segue and also trust,
The themes.
sometimes when I watch a tokusatsu show, a word just gets ruined for me. I can't see a promise without thinking about Saber. I can't hear Aibo without thinking about Deca Ranger. And thanks to episode 2 of Ultraman Arc, I can no longer be normal about the word trust. Like seriously, I'll be watching some unrelated tokusatsu, or a J-drama, or even like something far removed from Japanese entertainment entirely, and then someone will say trust, and then Yuma's voice in my head says Mazu wa shinjiru koto against my will. It just lives there now. And much like it lives in my head, trust lives in Ultraman Arc's themes. It makes sense that Yuma would make trust such a core tenet of his philosophy. After all, nobody believed him when he said that he was saved by a giant of light, even though as it turns out he was right about that. And as a result, Yuma believes in people, even children calling the Skip hotline about their dad's construction projects. He knows how it feels to not have people believe you, and how it's especially important for children to be listened to when they say something's wrong. Seeing as Ultraman's target audience is, in fact, kids, who are probably watching with their parents, it's really important to show these children being listened to. Adults should protect kids, and dismissing their concerns does not help them on the road to becoming well-adjusted adults. This philosophy of Yuma's is there in the other characters too. Immediately upon hearing it all starts with a little trust, Shu illegally hijacks a GDF satellite to help with the Lyoto situation, and it's also brought up by him in episode 4, when they think what's going on with Nezutron could just be a normal rat problem. Arc doesn't shy away from the consequences of trust being broken either. Although everything ended up okay, Yuma's clearly incredibly hurt in episode 11 when Shu relays the information that the GDF wants to attack Givas and has no reason to believe it's sentient. And in turn, he hurts Shu by boiling over and saying that as a result of this betrayal of trust, he's just like everyone else at the GDF. In turn, in episode 12, the moment that has the most emotional weight before Yuma actually talks to Givas is Shu saying that he doesn't know if Givas has a will of its own, but he trusts that feeling of Yuma's. Like, look at Yuma's face here, he's so happy about this. My son. Another example of this is in episode 9, Goodbye Rin. Rin wants to believe that Satoru isn't part of the illegal kaiju trade, and him betraying that trust is devastating for her. Because of that betrayal, Rin has to say goodbye to a part of her life that was formative, if one that probably wasn't healthy, because if you blow off your fiancé to hang out with a high school girl, you're weird as hell, I'm not sorry. But it was thanks to Satoru's influence that Rin joined Skip in the first place, and in betraying her trust, all of her past memories of him become tainted with the knowledge that he isn't exactly a good guy who's worth looking up to. Betraying someone's trust has long-term effects, and I think it's important for kids to know how much that hurts. That way, if they're on the receiving end of it, they'll be ready, and if they break someone's trust, they'll know exactly the kind of pain they're causing. What's more is that ARC's usage of trust as a theme and its usage of imagination as a theme are intertwined. The story shows that you can't have trust in someone if you're not willing to be empathetic and put yourself in their shoes, and in order to do that, you need to have a good imagination. The show also says it, seeing as that's almost a direct quote from Shu in episode 6, but again, shows it as well. Shu's probably the strongest example of this because of episode 6. Due to his past trauma over aliens disguising themselves as humans, which is elaborated on in the movie, he does not imagine that Mr. Numata can be anything aside from a threat who's trying to fool the humans around him. And he's wrong. He's incredibly wrong, and he acknowledges that his imagination wasn't strong enough to empathize with Numata when he should have. By episode 23, look, we all know about that van scene. 99% of the time, the most replayed section of any given episode of Ultraman on YouTube is the fight, but for episode 23 of Ultraman Arc, it is 2 men in a van. I always took Shu and Yuma's conversation there as Shu doing the opposite of outing Yuma as Arc. He knows, and Yuma probably knows he knows. But because Shu's learned to empathize with others thanks to Yuma, he accepts it when Yuma's not ready to spill all the beans just yet. Shu even says that, in the past, he probably would have said that they had nothing to hide because they're a team. It's thanks to Yuma teaching him the importance of empathy, which requires imagination, that he can accept Yuma's choice. Of course, that's not the only place that imagination comes up in Arc. It's very much Arc's central theme, and I'd be a fool to not acknowledge that. In another interview with Animate Times, Tsujimoto stated that he came up with the show's Unleash Your Imagination tagline first, and then worked backwards from there to create the kind of hero who could embody that. It's there in the fight scenes. Episode 1, where Arc shatters the barrier and uses the pieces to stab the rampaging Shagong, is one of the most iconic scenes in the show, and from what I've gathered, that's sold a lot of people on Arc in general. But the importance of imagination doesn't just show up in the form of sick action scenes, nor does it only apply to empathy. Having an imagination is how Yuma lived through the trauma of losing his parents and nobody believing him about Arc's existence. In Wes Anderson's 2023 film Asteroid City, there's a repeated line that really stuck with me. You can't wake up if you don't fall asleep. Now, when I first saw Asteroid City, I didn't really grasp what that line meant, but thanks to Ultraman Arc, I absolutely do. It's because Yuma spent so long drawing pictures of the Giant of Light who saved his life that Arc has his armor, and that Hoshimoto has its hero. It's only through being creative and using his imagination, even though we know that at some point Yuma stopped drawing altogether, that Yuma's managed to survive for this long even when he's been at his lowest. It's also through Yuma's imagination that Rution fell in love with planet Earth, as he mentions in episode 15. Empathy, as well as optimism, even if it's the gritted teeth, I'm doing this because if I don't, I'll fall into despair and that would cause problems kind, requires you to be able to imagine the best case scenario, no matter how many times the world lets you down or the worst possible thing happens. You can change the world and how other people think by having an optimistic and trusting outlook, but again, that requires you to be able to imagine. And as a slightly adjacent note, I like how Arc treats imagination like a muscle, not something innate. It's true that Yuma's imagination is incredibly strong, but just like Shu does, we can all exercise our imaginations and make them stronger too. It would have been really easy for Arc to use imagination as escapism, and I'm not saying that doesn't work in fiction sometimes too. After all, I'm the guy whose favorite season of Sentai is Tokyuger, and the way imagination works there is more in line with escapism as a coping mechanism for the trauma of the characters not being able to find their hometown. But Ark's kind of anti-escapism in a way that I find really interesting. In episode 21, when Aoi uses the Dreambird's powers to give her ideas for stories and also to summon King of Mons when she's frustrated, it's only through looking inside herself and destroying said Dreambird that she can face the future, even though it's still a struggle for her. In episode 10, Kazuo has connection, namely with the alien Fio, who he can only communicate with through radio waves. Said radio waves end up calling Noisler to Earth, and he breaks down completely at the fact that Fio's on the verge of dying. But it's also implied through Shu's diary entries that Kazuo's knowledge has helped the GDF, and that Kazuo's on his way to a proper friendship with Yuma. Him locking himself in his room all day and only talking to his distant friend just reinforced his isolation and resentment. There's also episode 22, where we're treated to a world that has no kaiju. There's no trauma, no pain. We can assume that Yuma's parents are still alive, since kaiju don't exist, and therefore nothing could have killed them. Skip is a coffee shop. Yuppie is a dog. It never rains, and as a result of that lack of any flavor of sadness, there's no color and no rainbow. The so-called peaceful world the man in the white mask created isn't really peaceful. It's just bland and boring and depressing in its own special way. You need to have rain in order to have a rainbow. You need to face the pain of reality if you want to see the beauty in it too. Hell, Shu pretty much says this in his diary entry for that very episode. We shouldn't just avoid fear and sadness, they encourage our growth. And of course, we have episodes 24 and 25, where Swede traps Yuma in dreams where his parents are alive, where he doesn't have to keep running and can live a normal, happy life. It's not like Yuma isn't tempted by those realities, and he comes pretty close to staying in one. But he ultimately rejects staying in those dreams because in the real world he has people he wants to protect. The use of a dream-eating kaiju specifically to target Yuma's extremely powerful imagination was such a clever choice. Like I said, you can't wake up if you don't fall asleep, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't wake up. Is it hard to face reality? Yes, absolutely. Do you need imagination to get through things with a positive attitude? You sure do. But Ark says that, while imagination is a powerful and important ability, sinking too deeply into it doesn't help anyone. That's why I think that the most powerful theme in Ark is one that's never really explicitly stated. Healing doesn't just require the ability to imagine better things, but it also requires connection. Humans need to rely on each other to survive, and most of the time, the incident of the week is resolved through connecting and communicating with others as much as it is solved by Ark punching a kaiju until it explodes. With Rin, for example, even after she says goodbye to the version of herself who admired Satoru in episode 9, Yuppie is right there when she turns around, and they love her. It's thanks to that bond that she can smile again. And while this occurs off-screen, we know from episode 4 that she moved around a lot as a kid, and that her connection to the people of Hoshimoto, even if she isn't a native, make her consider the place her hometown. Bond's focus episodes have this too. By repairing the connection that he had with Dr. Makino, the both of them moved on from the incident that separated them, and as a result got back into speculating and doing research like no time had passed. In episode 20, it's his relationship with his daughter that takes the spotlight, and because he stops and takes the time to understand her perspective, we can't all do everything, but we can all do what we can, the two of them come out the other side stronger than they were before. It's Rin who helps Aoi destroy the Dreambird in 21, and like I said, Kazuo starts healing because of his connection to Yuma. Hell, Givas just needed a friend, and Yuma becoming that friend stopped him from rampaging. With Shu, it's his connection with Yuma that does the healing. He clearly cares for all of Skip, but let's be real for a second here. In episode 16, we see that Shu's greatest fear is saying goodbye to all of the members of Skip, yes? And said fear initially takes the form of a giant Yuma. Need I say more? I think this is clearest in the Ark movie, where we learn that what worked for Yuma, namely processing his trauma through art, did not work for Shu. Shu made a statue in an attempt to deal with how guilty he felt over his colleague Kyuchi's death, but he ended up throwing it away because it disgusted him so much. As a result, those feelings were ripe to be twisted by the Repo aliens, turning Shu into Gilark, who, of course, looks like the statue Shu made just like how Yuma's drawings became Ark and making him rampage. It's only through Yuma offering to share in Shu's pain and saying he wants to take as much of it away from Shu as he can that Shu snaps out of it. It's Yuma's rainbow tears that bring him back to the side of good. And Shu returns the favor in Ark's final few episodes. He literally rides Yuppie and uses his little Ghostbusters thing to help Yuma and Ark return to reality, and by accepting Yuma's watch before Yuma leaves, he's keeping Yuma's connection with the people of this planet alive. But to me at least, the theme of healing through connection is at its strongest throughout Yuma's character arc. It's not like Yuma ever turns to the camera and says, "Hey, I'm suffering from PTSD and depression," but the signs are pretty obvious if you look or if you've lived them. He oversleeps, he has nightmares. It's mentioned in Shu's diary that he doesn't have any hobbies, and of course there's his speech to the Swede-created version of his father in episode 25. He explicitly states that there's not a single day where he doesn't still feel that pain, but he keeps running desperately because it's the only way he can live with the ache in his chest. In every single past episode, be they the goofy ones or the serious ones, Yuma's still been carrying that pain. So one place where we see connections healing Yuma is through his relationship with Ruchion. I once read a Japanese fan tweet that arc is Yuma's imagination combined with Ruchion's love, and god, do you ever feel that love. Ruchion's voice being provided by Yuma's father's actor just adds to that. It's entirely possible that Yuma imagined Ruchion having a voice similar to that of his dad's, either consciously or subconsciously, and their bond with each other saves the world on multiple occasions. Yuma encouraging Ruchion to unleash his imagination might lead to the whole poisoned by galaxy armor stuff later, but it's still a cathartic moment because it's Yuma helping Ruchion the same way that Ruchion has helped him all this time. He does it again in episode 25 by going to Rution's planet to help with the exploding sun problem. A family can be a relatively normal 23-year-old dude and the giant of light who saved him when he was a kid. Now, also in episode 25, Yuma says, "As long as you have an irreplaceable friend by your side, you can run anywhere." In the movie, that phrase is completed with "no matter what darkness might come." So the overall message here, with all of that in mind, is that Yuma isn't going to stop running anytime soon. It is, after all, the only way he knows how to live. But because he has Skip, and more specifically because he has Shu, he can face any darkness. In the behind the scenes from the ARC series Blu-ray, Yuma's actor, Totsuka Yuki, emphasizes that when he gives Shu his watch, he asks Shu to take it and doesn't just tell him to take care of it. Seeing as said watch is Yuma's last memento of his father, and how Yuma offered to share Shu's pain in the movie, it's Yuma's way of asking if Shu is willing to share in his pain too. There's this incredibly powerful scene in the last arc Alive where we learn that baby Yuma didn't just draw pictures of the Giant of Light. He also drew pictures of monsters meant to destroy that hero. When encountering his past self, however, to paraphrase, Yuma's sure that his younger self is lonely, and that his imagination is full of scary things. But if he can imagine other people's feelings, he'll meet people he cares about who care about him in turn. Aside from the fact that watching it made me sob, if I had to give ARC a sole thesis statement, it'd pretty much be that. Imagination lets us connect with other people, and in turn, those connections are what enable us to heal. There are going to be dark times, and there will be trauma and disaster, and relationships that change over time. None of those things are exactly easy to deal with, and ARC doesn't show them as such. It's because humans have the ability to bond with each other, however, that we can get through those things, and keep running towards a brighter tomorrow. And speaking of everything that Yuma cares about, and the people that care about him,
The characters.
a year and change ago, if you asked me who my favorite Ultra host was, I wouldn't have an answer. Namely, because I'd only seen Blazer in full, and though I absolutely adore Gento, I sort of knew that the Ultra host who would take the #1 spot in my heart would be one that I hadn't met yet. And now that ARC's aired in its entirety, and I've seen a lot more Ultra as a direct result of this, I know who's #1 alright. And it is Hisei Yuma, as you can probably tell by the fact that this video is about Ultraman ARC. It has honestly been a hot minute since a tokusatsu protagonist gripped me the way Yuma did. At first, I was pretty sure that she would be my favorite character. Gay loser who loves coffee could be my dating app profile, and I liked making fun of them. I still do, but I used to too. Then episode 3 hit. For one thing, I am a sucker for a hero who's spurred to helping others because they went through a traumatic experience. In episode 3, Yuma's line, "The thing is, I've been plenty sad and scared. There were times when I had given up on just about everything, but I know I'm not the only one suffering out there. I want to protect everyone's futures, so I'll keep running forward. I think about that every single day," brought to mind Eiji's line in the 4th episode of Kamen Rider O's. "I'm not a nice guy, not at all, so it's okay if you don't trust me. It's just, if you can help someone, and you don't, you might regret it for the rest of your life." That was the moment I became a Hino Eiji enjoyer for life, so it's no surprise that that moment made me ride or die for Yuma too. But more importantly, episode 3 is a flashback. The climactic battle is his first fight as Ark, and when Yuma says that, it's long before he's aware of any Giants of Light. The fact that he pursued this line of work to protect everyone's futures, despite the fact that he was only armed with a degree in kaiju biology, makes me love him even more. I've read in a few places that people think Yuma is bland or boring, but I disagree. He doesn't have a huge, bombastic personality, sure, but as I said earlier, Yuma's also suffering from depression and PTSD throughout the whole series. The show isn't about a sunshiny boy being broken by the events, because the events already broke him. It's about someone who's struggling with mental health, picking himself up and figuring out how to save the day anyway, because if he does, he might be able to live with his survivor's guilt and pain. So of course he's not going to be yelling or spouting catchphrases. It's probably taking like 70% of his energy just to show up at work and do his job there. And it's not that Yuma doesn't love his job, because he very much does. In Shu's diary from episode 24, after defining art as deeply loving something and using it to reflect the richness of your heart, he asks Yuma what art is to him. Yuma replies that it's his job at Skip. It's true that part of his choice to work there was trauma-fueled, yes, but it's also clear that he's incredibly passionate about helping people, be they disgruntled childhood acquaintances, children, or giant robots who just need friends. And speaking of Givas and the episodes that he appears in, I love that Yuma does occasionally boil over and say cruel things he doesn't mean. It's such a realistic flaw for a character like Yuma to have. When you become used to holding back your emotions, which Yuma clearly does, seeing as he sure doesn't always actively angst about his past and just seems like a normal dude on the surface, those emotions will come out eventually, and often in ways that are explosive and hurt people. The fact that he's hit hard with guilt immediately after he tells Shu he's just like everyone else at the GDF, and you can tell he regrets it from his face and his early actions in episode 12, it's just such good character writing. And the fact that Yuma's a kaiju biologist? Yuma states in episode 5 that he was afraid of kaiju as a kid, which is completely understandable given the circumstances, and studying things that traumatized you is an actual way to overcome your fears and deal with that trauma to some degree. It reminds me of how my mother, who grew up in tornado country, used to watch every single documentary about tornadoes on the Weather Channel. The more you know about something, and the more you know about how to keep yourself safe from something, the less scared you are of it. And Yuma, by choosing to dedicate his life to keeping other people safe from kaiju, is in turn helping make the world a little bit less scary for people who were vulnerable in the same way he was. It's also very clearly not just the job part of his job that Yuma loves. He loves Skip's people too. On his very rare day off in episode 13, after spending some time with his grandmother, he goes to Skip. On my days off, I don't even set foot near my workplace unless I'm starving and don't have money for other food. And I love my coworkers. Meanwhile, here's Yuma, showing up with food and getting roped into correcting Dr. Makino's writing with a smile on his face. At the end of the series, he says that Skip is his family, and he so obviously cares about them so much. He doesn't let Rin give the credit to Ark for saving the day in episode 4. In episode 5, when he sees that the Chief and Dr. Makino are having a serious conversation about their pasts, he lets that play out before he invites them for breakfast. And the moment that Yuma realizes Shu was carrying the pain of his past in the movie, Yuma regrets not seeing it sooner and offers to share it with him. And Yuma, in turn, is very much loved by Skip. Shu and his crush aside, since I'll be elaborating on that later, look at the way that Rin, the Chief, and Yuppie react to Yuma still choosing to transform and fight in episode 24. They're all terrified for him. They want him to live. And his absence in the office while he's helping out on Rution's planet clearly affects all of them, not just Shu. For example, Rin's the one who brings up that there was a mysterious light in the sky the night before, and how it feels like a signal from Yuma. They want to protect this boy just as much as he wants to protect them. I absolutely adore Yuma's relationship with Rution too, of course. They are, after all, one and the same, and they have the same goal, to make sure that the people that they care about don't suffer. The fact that Rution fell in love with humanity thanks to seeing the world through Yuma's eyes is just so beautiful. He looked at the world the way this incredibly lonely and sad boy saw it while he was growing up without parents or even anyone who'd believe his truth. And because of Yuma's strong imagination, he found the world beautiful and its people worth protecting. That's why, despite the fact that episode 25's ending initially made me cry in pain, it makes perfect sense that Yuma would go to Rution's planet to help out. As he says, Rution is his family as much as Skip is. Again, in Ark the Live, there's this moment where Yuma asks Rution if, now that things are safe on his planet, they'll separate. What Rutian replies is that he doesn't want to lose Yuma, but more than that, he doesn't want Yuma to go through the pain of loss again. It's such a sweet moment between a boy and his ultra dad. Of course, when it comes to people who care about Yuma, let's look at Ishido Shu. My god. Yes, Yuma is my favorite arc character. Yes, Shu is basically a shit ton of Laura bait traits all thrown together in a 3-piece suit and a pair of specs. And I am not immune to him! Like, yes, the cool, experienced professional who's struggling with grief and guilt while softening and growing kinder thanks to the nice boy protagonist got me to some degree. Am I surprised? Is anyone surprised? No. Of course not. I have like 2 types. And this is one of them. Now, it's extremely hard to talk about Shu without going into his relationship with Yuma because it's so central to his character and how he develops. I mentioned earlier that he's an audience surrogate for people who don't know what to expect from Arc, but at the same time, he also works as a vehicle for the audience to use to learn Arc's lessons. And he sure learns a lot of those lessons from Yuma, doesn't he? I will try not to be too much of a Fujo until we actually start talking about the ship in its dedicated section, but let's look at the material here. Although you wouldn't know this if you didn't look at various magazines for information, Shu's background actually mirrors Yuma in some very interesting ways. For one thing, the both of them didn't really have friends growing up. In episode 10, Kazuo isn't Yuma's childhood friend. He straight up says that Yuma tried to befriend him in middle school, and Kazuo mostly just found it annoying. That, combined with the fact that baby Yuma spent his time drawing pictures of a giant of light nobody thought existed except for him, it's pretty safe to assume that Yuma had a very lonely childhood. Shu, on the other hand, is canonically the child of famous scientists who traveled for work throughout his childhood. It's also canon that Shu's one of the younger guys of the GDF, as he mentions in his diary from episode 3, and that he graduated from college at the age of 18. That's not exactly a recipe for interacting with people your own age. The two of them are just 2 years apart, but at the same time, their friendship is likely the first truly strong bond with a peer that they've both had. And, as is revealed in the movie, Shu and Yuma both turned to art after experiencing loss. As I mentioned earlier, while this worked for Yuma, it very much did not work for Shu. It makes perfect sense that it didn't, too. Even if Shu had the creativity necessary to sculpt in the first place, Shu didn't see the point in looking into his heart or using his imagination until he met Yuma, and what happened with Kyuchi was long before he joined Skip. Because of this, he couldn't look at the sculpture he made without hating his own weakness, and tossed it, burying those feelings instead of dealing with them. It doesn't feel like the fact that their pasts are so close, with just enough differences to have different results in terms of the kinds of adults they became, is a coincidence. Though I can't find confirmation one way or the other, having Shu mirror Yuma like this is such a smart, easy way to set him up for character development, which he gets, and beautifully. I mentioned previously that Shu admits in episode 6 that he needs to work on his imagination, and that by 23 he's using it for empathy, but there are so many moments before, as well as in between those episodes that show his growth. He's repeating it all starts with a little trust by episode 4, and Yuma's not even with him that episode. It's also made canon in Shu's diary that he made damn sure Mr. Numata would get to stay with the others at the Agebono Inn after the events of episode 6, and about a sentence later, he says it's because Yuma's imagination was correct. There's a scene in episode 14 where Shu asks if Yuma's okay when the two of them go up to the Monohorn, seeing as Yuma had a traumatic experience there. Yuma says he tells the rest of Skip not to worry about it, and Shu replies that Yuma's strong. At the time, it honestly just sounded gay, since "you're strong" is one of the many ways to say "I love you" in repressed tokusatsu man language. Sorry, not Fujoing out yet. The point is, of course Shu would genuinely think that. When he's faced with his trauma in the movie, he doesn't run towards it. He runs away. Literally, he runs out of the Skip office and then turns into Gillark and starts rampaging. And in a move that shows my take on Arc's thesis perfectly, it's Yuma imagining Shu's pain and connecting with him, and also crying rainbow tears onto his wrist, that brings Shu out of that darkness. Shu showcases the fact that connection heals us through having his connection with Yuma heal him, and by the end of the series, that connection heals Yuma in turn. I also like the fact that, although he absolutely has his damsel in distress moments, Shu's never really treated as incapable. He's mostly powerless, yes. He can't fight at Arc's side, and as we see in episode 23, that's a source of great frustration for him. But he's also crazy good with a gun, while being shown as intelligent enough to be in the GDF Space Science Division specifically. Though he is canonically a Nepo baby, since his grandfather founded said space science division, he's clearly knowledgeable about kaiju and aliens, and he's also smart enough to know that he won't get in too much trouble for illegally using the GDF satellite to deal with the Leoto situation. Another thing about Shu is... I'm sorry, I have to get this out.
The unscripted section where Laura complains about Shu being a coffee snob.
So let me just preface this by saying that I'm not just talking out of my ass here. I was a barista for a really, really, really long time. Like, most of my adult life, I was working in, coffee shops and cafes, right? So, I do know a lot about coffee, and I know that the opinions that Shu has are opinions that you can have about coffee. But why would you want that for yourself? Okay, so I don't think that in a vacuum, there's anything wrong with preferring your coffee black. I don't think that it's a bad thing to prefer your coffee black at all. No. If anything, like, if you're the guy who goes to a coffee shop and you're like, I want a black coffee, like, the baristas will love you because that's, like, the easiest thing that you can make. That being said, if you can't, like, find it in your heart to enjoy a latte every now and then, or, like, a funky Americano with, like, some vanilla in there or something, like, why? And okay, here's another thing. I have a lot of things to say in this rant. He roasts his own beans. Like, the stuff he says about, keeping his beans at a certain temperature, that's before he roasts them, because he roasts his own beans. You don't need to do that. Nobody on Earth needs to do that. Like, you can go to the store and I'm not even against grinding your own beans. Because, like, depending on how you're brewing your coffee, like, what setup you got, what you're doing with it, you're gonna want, like, either a coarser or more fine grind. That's fine. No one needs to roast their own coffee beans. No. People do that for you, and then it's at the store. You don't have to make it that hard on yourself. And, like, I used this metaphor when I was talking to some friends about this section. The way Shu is about coffee is, like, if you went to an art museum and you are a huge fan of paint, like paint as a concept, and so you're at the art museum and you're looking at some amazing painting and you're like, how dare they destroy the sanctity of this paint by doing something like making a painting out of it. Like, you can just... A cafe au lait isn't even that weak necessarily. It depends entirely on A, the roast of the beans, and B, like, how much milk you put in there. A cafe au lait isn't necessarily weak. And, like, listen. And I get that, like, if you have the money and the time to roast your own beans, then it's probably gonna be a cup of coffee that's better than, like, what you're gonna get at Starbucks, although every cup of coffee that you make yourself is better than what you would get at Starbucks, because Starbucks, like, super over roasts their beans. Like, there's barely any taste difference between a dark roasted Starbucks and, like, a medium roast, because it's all just, like, roasted to hell so that all the flavor is pretty much gone. So, don't do Starbucks. That's not the point, though. The point is, like, yeah, it probably makes a better cup of coffee than the normal, but the normal isn't that bad, and if you truly love coffee, if you're willing to drink instant coffee if it's necessary, which is something that even I'm not willing to do because instant coffee is ass, like, you can enjoy a freaking latte. You can enjoy something that's like espresso and some milk, and you won't die. Find joy in your heart, And this isn't like a case of, like, they researched it poorly, and so I'm mad because it's a thing that I know a lot about and they got it wrong. No. There are people like Shu on coffee forums, like, everywhere, and yes, there are coffee forums, and yes, I've been on them, and I think everyone there is insane because you don't need to roast your own beans. Grinding, maybe, sure, I will allow grinding. You don't need to roast your own beans. You don't need to. It's a step that you can skip because of the wonders of technology and infrastructure. Also, there's an episode where he makes a pour over. Fuck you. Listen, let me explain. So, like, back when I was working at, a green apron-y cafe, I can just say Starbucks. I bitched about Starbucks earlier. When I worked at a Starbucks, basically, pour-overs were such a fucking pain. Because we have coffee brewed there, right? We have coffee brewed. You can just drink that. And if it's not, like, perfectly fresh or whatever, then people would order a pour over, and it's so annoying because you have to like make sure the grounds are a certain way, and you have to make sure the water's a certain temperature, and you have to get it from like this source and not this other source so you don't end up like burning it. And it's so annoying and also just so pretentious. Like, you can just drink a cup of coffee. Dude, what you want is coffee, you can drink a coffee. If it's like slightly not warm, were you gonna be burning your tongue anyway? No. You would wait for it to cool because you're like a normal person who has self-preservation instincts. So, the fact that Shu makes pour-overs, I can't forgive him for that. I am sorry. No one needs to make a pour-over, ever. Get a coffee machine, get a French press, get some patience. Accept that your cup of coffee isn't gonna be the perfect, like, whatever the fuck degrees every single fucking time. It's not that hard. And it's just so, like, the instant coffee thing again. I'm sorry, I can't get over this. Even if I had, like, no other caffeine, no tea, no coffee, no energy drinks, nothing, I still would not go for instant coffee because that's how bad it tastes. So if Shu is truly a coffee lover, which he claims to be, but he's willing to drink instant coffee, but not like a nice latte, what's his problem? Is he okay? Does he need to talk to somebody? All of his opinions, they're opinions that you can have. They're opinions that people have, and they're people that I want to know what made you like this. And I want to know what made Ichido Shu like this too. Just, he makes pour-overs. No one needs to make a pour-over. Ever. And especially not your barista, so be nice to your baristas, tip them generously, because they've probably had someone that day that's been like, my matcha, I wanted this with whole milk, not 2%, and it's like, it's the same fucking kind of milk, basically. It's a 1 milk fat % difference. Okay, that's not good. That's actually, like, if you're a barista, you should try to get people's drinks right, but if someone messes up your drink, just be nice about it, be chill. You will have no problems with any barista, no matter how complicated your drink is, as long as you're chill about it. And again, there's nothing wrong with liking black coffee in a vacuum, but there is something wrong with hearing the idea of a latte and being like, that's so weak. It's not weak, necessarily. It depends entirely on how many espresso shots are in there. And if Shu is as addicted to caffeine as he seems, then, like, he's probably getting a bunch of extra shots anyway. It's probably, like, almost more of a cortado in terms of, like, milk to coffee ratio if it's Shu. So put some fucking milk in there, suck it up, and drink your coffee like a normal person, you fucking snob. Thank you.
Okay, back to talking about the characters.
Oh, y'all have no idea how long I have been sitting on all of that. Anyway, I can at least credit the writer's room for being well-researched, even if it's well-researched in a way that activates my latent barista rage. What I actually wanted to say is that you can track Shu's character development through his relationships with the non-Yuma members of Skip 2. We learn in episode 16 that GDF officers rarely know where their next assignment will be, or who they'll be working with. He's used to not getting attached to people, and especially not to people that he's assigned to work with. That makes it all the more potent that his biggest fear is saying goodbye to everyone at Skip and not just Yuma. In the prior episode, Shu tries to get Rin, the chief, and Yuppie to stay back out of a desire to protect them, but also, he respects their choice to go with him. Hell, just the way Shu writes about wanting everyone to finally try his coffee in his diary makes it pretty clear that being in Hoshimoto and around Skip has changed him. It's really nice to see. And speaking of the rest of Skip, I love the rest of Skip. They don't get as much focus as Shu and Yuma, of course, but they get just enough to be fully fleshed out characters in their own right. And they're great. They're great characters. I absolutely adore Rin. I like that in episode 9, it's touched on that she felt isolated thanks to being a woman interested in something that's typically male-dominated. That, combined with her episode 4 reveal of how she, too, moved around a lot as a kid, means that she's a great representation of all of us lonery, girl-shaped people in male-dominated spaces. And she's absolutely a genius. She built Yuppie for one thing, and the world is much better off with Yuppie in it. She made Yuppie able to travel across the internet because she was bored one day. When I'm bored, I end up playing Fire Emblem for hours on end, which is way less productive. She's awesome. But Rin's never portrayed as insufferable or cold because of her intelligence. For one thing, she still makes mistakes, although I personally refuse to blame her for what happened with Nezutron. And she still feels. She wants to help the people of Hoshimoto City, who love her as much as she loves them. She even wants to help Satoru, and he's a trash fire of a human being who deserves the worst. But just because she wants to help him, just because he was someone important to her, doesn't mean she won't let him go when she knows he's not the man she thought he was. With smart female characters in fiction, it's very easy to fall into this trap of them being perfect in every way, which is fine, I guess. I'd rather see that than a female character who's relegated to emotional support and cheering on the men around her. But it's also really nice to see a woman who's smart, both emotionally and in terms of the text she makes, who also has her flaws. She feels realistic in a way that a lot of female characters in tokusatsu don't, because she's not just written as the girl one at Skip. She's written as a person who just so happens to also be a woman. It's great. And Chief Bon is so dad. He's such a dad. Even before learning that he's actually a dad, he just has dad energy. That scene in the first episode where Yuma gets on his shoulders to get readings of the kaiju pretty much sealed that for me. It's really interesting to have a character who was a fully grown human on K-Day too, since the rest of the cast would have been either 7 or 9 years old. It's only touched on briefly in episode 5, but there's a difference from being a kid when the world changes forever and being an adult when that happens. In that episode, Dr. Makino says that Bon would have made a great researcher, but Bon explains that he jumped at the opportunity to join Skip because he wanted to use what he learned to help the people he cares about. That's just as heroic as transforming into a 60-story tall giant. It's not like Bon doesn't have his struggles with that either. I'm weak for father-daughter content, as I mentioned previously, and as a result, episode 20 hit me like an arc finalized directly to the ribcage. Bon worrying about Ultraman Arc being a bigger presence in his daughter's life than he is feels like a completely understandable worry for a dad in a world with Arc to have. The reminder he gets that what Skip does is just as important as what Arc does, and that we can all contribute even if we can't do everything. It's why episode 20 is one of many Arc episodes that makes me sob like a baby. I also really liked Bon's actions in the movie, where he's the first one to pick up on the fact that Mugan is basically Motoki's larger-than-average dog. Since Bon had previously had a dog who was precious to him that he lost, and since he knew that pain, he knew how to deal with the situation without having to resort to putting said dog down with force. And as a meta aside, I really appreciate his actor's commitment to doing the Abare change at every opportunity. Man is absolutely committed to that bit there. But Skip isn't just human people, no. Yuppie is perhaps the most important character not only in Arc, but also in fiction in general. Okay, that's exaggeration for comedic effect, but if you don't like Yuppie, you should get that fixed. I love an adorable mascot robot, and Yuppie provides adorable mascot robot in spades. Whether they're floating around as U-Bot or holding down the fort as Peabody, Yuppie always provides serotonin and joy. I love the fact that they get an allowance, which they apparently spent on questionable alien language textbooks, and also, thanks to the way that Yuppie is designed, anyone riding on their back automatically looks kind of hilarious. They're the perfect mix of comic relief, adorable, and this is actually the kind of tool that would be necessary for helping with researching kaiju. And despite the fact that yes, they're a mascot character, Yuppie is never too much and they never come off as annoying either. Yuppie genuinely gets one of the best emotional beats in the series when they comfort Rin after all the Satoru stuff happens. Their relationship is so cute, and it's genuinely one of the most meaningful bonds in the series. And speaking of things that are both cute and meaningful,
The music.
early in 2020, I saw a tweet announcing the major debut of a tarot-themed idol girl group called Arcana Project. I like tarot, I really like their songs, and the amount of Oshi feeling I got from Aida Shion was incredibly strong. They've been my favorite J-pop girl group ever since. And 4 years later, seeing them announced as the group who do the ending themes for the new season of Ultraman felt like a huge win for me personally. Because one thing about J-pop groups I stan is that they just will not do songs for tokusatsu shows, no matter how much I beg. And the songs that Arcana Project did for Arc are so good. My Girls' vocals absolutely shine, as always, and the lyrics are so fascinating. It's very much idol fare, but at the same time they still reflect Arc's story and themes. Mera Mera, for example, reflects Arc's theme of pain being necessary for joy. It's right there in the second verse. It's better to feel frustration and let it burn out, because when that's done you'll shine brighter. The line after the second chorus, about how even on days where it feels like you'll never reach the place you're aiming for, you can still run if you're with someone, I've seen a lot of people say that Mera Mera is about Yuma and Rutsion's bond, and lines like that make it feel like a really valid interpretation of it. The dance to the chorus is also super fun, as I have demonstrated by doing not one, but 2 TikToks of it. Out of ARC's 2 ending themes though, Michikake is definitely the one that I've thought about the most, as you can tell by the fact that I covered it on this very YouTube channel. Usually, when people say Mera Mera is about Yuma and Rutsion's bond, they'll follow that up by saying that Michikake is the song about Yuma and Shu's bond, and man, is that ever an interpretation that I agree with. Initially, I read the song as being about Shu's feelings towards Yuma, but after the movie and the events of the last 3 episodes of ARC, I very firmly believe that Michikake is Yuma and Shu at each other. It starts with the line, "I can't take it for granted. The fact I'm here right now is because you were too," which applies to both Yuma coming into Shu's life and Shu coming into Yuma's. Yuma unleashed Shu's imagination and emotions, and Shu gave Yuma friendship, support, and protection. The line in the chorus, "If you're the sun, I'll be the moon," is also just... I can't believe that's actually a line in here. The way I see it, to Shu, Yuma is like the sun. He's literally Ultraman Arc, and he's the one who shined a light into the parts of Shu's heart that he didn't see a need to look at. As a result, Shu's the moon. He can't shine on his own, but he can support and reflect Yuma's light. But the thing is, to Yuma, Shu is like the sun. Yuma states that it's thanks to Shu, as well as the rest of Skip, that he can keep running. They're the source of his light, which the moon can't generate on its own. Therefore, in Yuma's view, he's the one that's reflecting Shu's light, and not the other way around. And that's not even everything. Like, there's the second verse, with the, "If I woke up tomorrow and you weren't there, well, I might be overthinking a little, but it feels like my chest would burst." Is that not just "I don't want to lose you," which Yuma and Shu say to each other on 2 separate occasions, but slightly more stretched out? The second chorus, with the "like light and shadow will lean on each other," does that not literally happen in the movie, when Arc gets through to Gillark and they start working together? And God, the bridge! Knowing pain and sadness is what makes us kind. Yuma and Shu absolutely both know pain and sadness, and as a result, they're kind. God. I thought this song would just be a nice ending theme ballad with killer vocals. What I actually got was a song that is more or less a thesis statement on Yuma and Shu's relationship with each other. Props to you, Saeki Yusuke, who wrote both this and Mera Mera. You drove me insane. But the ending themes aren't the only pieces of music in ARC. I also love ARC Jump Into the Sky. For one thing, it's really fun to show ARC to people who have watched Kamen Rider X8, because then I get to drop the, "by the way, this is Don Masamune's actor singing this theme song" bomb, and watch them react to that, but it's also just so catchy and fun. The exercise that goes with it is so much fun too, which is why I have also made a TikTok of me dancing to that. Interestingly, ARC Jump Into the Sky also feels a bit like an idol song, although Access aren't exactly idols. The lyrics have a bunch of really cute random English, like the "gimme gimme love" bit, and it also has romanized words and katakana where you'd expect kanji. When I say it's written like an idol song, I mean that it's literally written like an idol song. This also means that there's a little bit of room for interpretation when you're translating it, which I find interesting. For example, the Ultraman wiki translates one line in the chorus as "on a journey to protect your happiness, the energy sparkles," but I always interpreted it as "every time I protect your happiness, my energy sparkles." Because the operative word here, tabi, is written in Roman letters instead of kanji, both interpretations are totally valid. I just like mine a little more. To me, ARC Jump Into the Sky is very much a Yuma and Rutsion song like Mera Mera is, and there are a few lines that point to this, at least in my interpretation. The "having you by my side gives me courage," "whenever I share this joy with you, something fantastic is revived," "your faith and my faith overlapping," it's all very evocative of the relationship that the two of them have with each other. And I also just really like the synths and the vocal harmonies. They're neat. But it's actually not just the songs with lyrics from ARC that captured me. There's a very, very small list of tokusatsu score tracks that I can remember by name. There's Why Tikitaze from Kamen Rider Revice, Fukatsu Ghost no Chikara from Heisei Generation's Dr. Pac-Man, and now there's also Ultraman ARC no theme UA_M-1. Even if you've watched ARC and can't recognize it by name, you probably would be able to if you heard it. It's the "Whoa, whoa" song that plays over the fight sequences, and I love the way it builds. The fast-paced drums, those beautiful strings, and the aforementioned whoa whoas just build up so much hype, and then about a minute and 40 seconds in, when the drums and vocals drop out, it's like you can feel things getting more intense, and Ark having to unleash his imagination to save the day. I also love how it incorporates the sound of Ark's transformation jingle, starting at about 2 minutes and 29 seconds in. It's just such a cool track, and it makes all of the action scenes it becomes the soundtrack to feel so epic. And speaking of said action scenes,
the suits and the action.
I've mentioned previously on this channel that I'm no action or suit design expert, and when it comes to Ultraman, I know even less than usual. But I do know that, before I started watching Ark properly, I saw a lot of people praising how cool and how creative the fight versus the Shagong in episode 1 was. And when I got to watching said fight, I could not help but agree. Ark's central theme, being imagination, makes for such engaging fight scenes. Yuma uses his abilities in ways you wouldn't expect, and it's just plain fun to watch. There's a reason that episode 1 fight is so iconic. Ark shattering the barrier over his knee and using the pieces to straight up shank the Shagong in question is unlike anything I'd seen in Ultra before, or anything in Ultra I've seen since. Another fight scene in Ark that I really like is in episode 21 with Ark and Givas versus King of Mons. Simply put, I like it when giant robots are in locations, and I love how serious of a threat King of Mons is too. Both of these boys get beat up even though they do manage to save the day. The movie also absolutely nails its action sequences. Because the movie is structured like 3 episodes of Ark put together, each third gets its own action scene, and each scene is just so neat in its own way. In the first third, Yuma and Mugon working together is awesome. I loved when Ark used the Luna armor shield as a frisbee for Mugon to catch after bouncing it off of the ballified Shagongs, and the parts where Ark was petting and hugging Mugon really warmed my heart too. The second chunk, with human-sized Ark versus Gartura-possessed Rin, is also hilarious to watch because of human-sized Ark alone, but I also really loved seeing Rin getting to use her hand tentacle thingies to slap Ark around. It was funny. She also just looks really cool with green hair, and I like that when the Gartura leaves Rin's body, she's the one who gets to shoot the thing. Good for her. But of course, when it comes to action scenes in the Ark movie, listen. The subtext of this part of the film aside, since I'll be covering that pretty shortly, Ark and Gillark fighting side by side is just so goddamn cool to watch. In my interpretation, at least, Shu's so much of an Ark fanboy that fighting as an Ultra comes easy to him. He's literally imitating his favorite superhero, and I love the way his Shu-typical instinct to push Yuma out of danger also shows up. I also love Gillark using galaxy armor to spin around the chunk of Hoshimoto City that the boys and the kaiju are floating on, and the way that Ark and Gillark come together, using both Galaxy Armor's knife thingy and Ark's classic I-beam sword to explode Repodios. It's so cool. It's just so cool. It makes a girl tear up, you know? And god, do I ever love Ark's armors. For one thing, the whole Yuma's childhood drawings turn into his forms thing is great, but the way they're used is also awesome. Solus Armor's debut coming after Yuma hears the support from the people of Hoshimoto in episode 4 is such a cool moment. And I love how it's his bulky, tanky kind of form. It's literally the people's support turning into Ark's strength. Luna Armor also has this super emotional debut in episode 7, being born from Yuma's mother telling him to be like the moon, e.g. someone who protects everyone, with Ark using its speed features to make sure that Homegir can safely give birth. And then, in episode 8, when Ark uses it in the virtual world to literally cook something up so that Kanegon will stop hoarding cryptocurrency and distribute the wealth back to the rest of Hoshimoto, you gotta love a form that's both heartbreaking and hilarious in equal measure. But not all of Ark's forms were born from Yuma's imagination. Galaxy Armor was born from Rution's imagination, and while it is a shame that using it eventually starts actively killing Yuma, it's just... of course I love the form that has the same colors as the Revice driver. Of course I do. And its debut genuinely made me cheer at my TV. The feathers, the knife axe thing, the fact that he can use it to think with portals, it's so cool. So goddamn cool. In most Ark post-canon stuff, it's Gillark that uses Galaxy Armor, and admittedly, it looks absolutely gorgeous on him. The more muted, slate gray and black tones of his body just make the purple and teal shades pop. Plus the contrast between Gillark using the cool color-themed Galaxy Armor and Ark using the warm color-themed Solus Armor just kinda scratches my brain. It makes them red-blue adjacent too, which is something that I always like in my ships. And with that, well, it's time for me to finally talk about what I've been trying desperately to not go too deep into for the last 12,000 or so words.
The ship.
I think that, if you've been watching my videos up until now, you know that I enjoy a ship every now and then. Especially since I have stated on several occasions that I ship things. I think that diving deep into the relationships that characters have with each other, and exploring why they act the way they do around each other, is a really critical part of analysis, and also it's fun to make my dolls kiss. And when I say I ship Yuma and Shu, I don't just mean because of the in-series hand-holding, or the hug, or the diary entries, or all the times that Shu pushes Yuma out of the way of danger, or because of the rainbow tears in the movie, or because of episodes 2, 6, 8, 11 and 12, 16, 17, 18, 22, 23, 24, and 25. I don't just mean because of this tweet from Shu's actor, Kaneta Sho, referring to Shu as the man who loves Arc, or because of the Blu-ray BTS where he says that Shu is too slow at acting on his feelings, or because of the time at an Arc the Live Q&A, when asked if he loves Coffee or Arc more, he said that because he now knows Arc is Yuma, he'd pick Arc. I don't just mean because of the cast calling Shu the show's heroine on several occasions, or because Totsuka Yuki stated in that same Blu-ray that Yuma and Shu understand each other better than anyone else at Skip. And, surprisingly, I don't just mean because it's coworkers to lovers where one of them is a tokusatsu protagonist, and the other is a repressed professional type with guilt issues, even though that does in fact make them my OTP in a different font, which I exploited for crossover fic purposes. Link below. Just kidding, you can find it yourself. No, none of that is what drove me directly into tea coffee hell. See, love stories, much like pretty much any story with a 3-part structure, more or less all follow the same arc. Though of course there are variations on exactly how said arc plays out. Person A meets person B, they spend some time as friends, there's unresolved romantic or sexual tension, a problem happens, and then the couple either breaks up, stays together, or gets a maybe ever after. And I kid y'all not, right down to the way that this show is fucking shot, Ultraman arc has a romance arc that puts some office BLs to shame. It follows the structure so perfectly, while being pretty damn intimate for a relationship between two men in a kids show about a 60-story tall superhero. Tea Coffee hits every single goddamn beat, and I'm about to break down how, because if I don't, I'm going to feel insane for the rest of my life. So, let's look at the footage of Tea Coffee's first meeting. A meet-cute is defined by the lovely folks over at Wiktionary as a situation in a film, television series, etc., in which a potential romantic couple meet for the first time in a way that is considered adorable, amusing, or cute. And Yuma and Shu's first meeting is very much framed like one. See how Shu turns around to watch Yuma as he goes, even though they actually haven't met at that point? That's intrigue. Curiosity even, it's a meet-cute. And seeing as their next interaction is Shu literally saving Yuma's life, I would say that absolutely qualifies as a cute first meeting. I'd say that their getting to know each other era lasts from episode 2 to about episode 7. In episode 2, of course, we have Shu doing the extremely normal dude move of illegally hijacking a satellite because Yuma said 9 syllables to him, and in episode 3, we have this rom-com-ass shot of the two of them on their way to school, to work, together. Said episode also has a diary entry from Shu where he says that Yuma's good morning was so refreshing that it washed away his sleepiness, so okay, sure. An extremely normal thing to say about another man there, especially in your diary. Episodes 4 and 5, being focused on Rin and the Chief respectively, have less tea coffee moments, but we're right back at it with episode 6, which I've affectionately called heated drama between men on several occasions. It's here that Shu actively admits that Yuma has an imagination that he doesn't, which ends up being a catalyst for Shu's character growth. And in a good romance story, it's not just about the characters growing to love each other, it's just as much about the characters growing themselves. Now, I'd say that the unresolved sexual/romantic tension stage of their relationship starts in episode 8 for one reason. That reason, of course, is that getting this close to your coworker's face to ask him to be a VTuber with you is deranged behavior, regardless of caffeine withdrawal symptoms. That is kissing distance. Look at them. What the fuck? And naming those VTuber avatars Alpha and Omega? Did they know? People at Supro, did you know? Did you know what you were doing when you named them this? Leave a comment. Answer me. Please. Alpha and Omega? Questionable names aside, it's at this point where I feel like Yuma and Shu's relationship really starts to deepen, especially since if you look at the comments on Alpha and Omega's livestream, you'll see that they canonically have a ship name. After that, we get episode 10, where Shu gets really weird in his diary about Yuma drinking Kazuo's coffee. We get episodes 11 and 12, where the two of them go through their first real fight, only to come out the other side trusting each other even more. We get episode 14, where Shu calls Yuma strong. We get episode 16, where, as I mentioned previously, Shu's fear of leaving Skip manifests as a giant Yuma, and where we get another BLS moment in the form of Shu giving Yuma permission to use his first name. That's an incredibly intimate thing to do in Japan, and again, the way it's shot, these close-ups of their faces in profile, with all the falling leaves in the background, it reminds me of cherry blossom trees that have bloomed and lost their flowers, which is classic J-drama confession iconography. The deepening of their relationship continues throughout the next few episodes, where we learn that Shu and Yuma will literally find each other in every universe. Not only does the Blazerverse version of Shu still push Arcverse Yuma out of the way of danger, as he is always doing in the Arcverse too, but he's also coworkers with Blazerverse Yuma, which means that he saw this guy who looks exactly like his coworker and was just like, okay, time to protect this other version of this guy. And again, just look at how this is framed and shot. See how the background's kinda blurred? It's engineered so that what's in focus is Shu and Yuma meeting for the first time all over again. And then, of course, while we didn't know this when Arc was airing, there's the movie, which takes place just before episode 22. I have never once doubted Shu's feelings towards Yuma, of course, because he's made them painfully obvious, but the movie proves that Yuma feels just as strongly towards Shu. He regrets not realizing Shu's pain and offers to share it because he doesn't want to lose Shu before Arc cries rainbow tears onto Gilarc's wrist, which is what snaps Shu out of the brainwashing. If you have a heterosexual explanation for actual rainbow-colored tears, please leave a comment. I would love to see someone explain to me how rainbow tears between two men could possibly be interpreted as anything besides romantic. Also, after Arc and Gilarc finish fighting, Yuma and Shu wake up on a rooftop, posed like this. For comparison's sake, this is a shot from actual Japanese BL drama Senpai This Can't Be Love. I do not say this show is shot like a BL lightly. I say it's shot like a BL because it is. Now, when the UST ends, the problem must begin, and to me, I think that problem starts in episode 23. Namely, because Yuma's killing himself to keep being Arc in an attempt to save the world, and Shu is powerless to stop him from doing so. Episode 23 is where we get that aforementioned van scene, and like I said, Shu does the opposite of outing Yuma as Ultraman Arc. But not only does he intentionally echo Yuma's "I don't want to lose you" from the movie, as I've learned is confirmed in his diary that's exclusive to the movie's Japanese Blu-ray release, the English dub of Arc actually somehow made this scene even gayer by making Shu's line immediately after that, "I'll protect you no matter what." That is not a direct translation of what Shu says in Japanese. That was a choice they made over at the English dub department at Supro, and I would like to thank them for it. And episodes 24 and especially 25 just crank up the angsty intimacy. For one thing, when the preview for episode 24 came out, I thought that this shot would be Shu holding Yuma's hand as he sleeps, which would be pretty gay in and of itself. But oh, Shu is not holding Yuma's hand while he sleeps. He's holding Yuma's hand while they are both awake. What's there to interpret? They're holding hands. There you go, there it is. Hand-holding. And I already referred to the end of episode 25 as Tea Coffee's marriage proposal, but it genuinely is the climax of their relationship. And again, it's so intimate. After everything they've been through, everything they've learned from each other, Yuma has one thing to ask Shu: if he's willing to take care of his wristwatch while he's away, and, subtextually, if Shu is willing to share Yuma's pain the way Yuma offered to share Shu's. And Shu's response being to take the watch, yes, but also to hold Yuma tightly and thank both him and Ultraman Arc? Look, this is a kids show. It's not like they can kiss. But if you can, track down the behind the scenes of this episode from the series Blu-ray. Yuma needed this hug just as much as Shu did. So where does their love story end up, you may ask? I'd say it's a maybe ever after with a stronger chance of being happy than it is of being sad. After all, the last shot of Arc as a series is Shu refusing to give the phone to anyone else at Skip once Yuma calls, and they spend a lot of time fighting side by side in the Arc the Live that takes place after this. I'm not sure what lies in the future in terms of Arc content. I don't know if we'll get crossovers with Omega or any other future Ultramen outside of stage stuff that's hard to track down, especially because Kaneta Sho is now a cast member of FX's Emmy Award-winning series Shogun, and that's fucking wild to me. But I know for a fact that, beat for beat, Yuma and Shu are written like a love story, and I think that, though it may take them some time to sort through everything they feel, they're eventually gonna figure it out.
In conclusion,
So after all of that jumping into the sky, you might be wondering, why, Laura, did you decide to make a video on Ultraman Arc? And to answer that question, I think my scripts are at their best when I'm trying to prove something. For my essay on Ryuki, it was about how the misogynistic way it writes its women has had ripple effects on the Kamen Rider franchise as a whole. For my essay on Gaim, it was about proving that Gaim is more than just the dude bro fruit show, and that it does actually have a lot of depth. For this video, I was trying to prove to one person that I do in fact understand Ultraman Arc. And that person's name? Laura B, aka Twitter user at ytikitaze, which you probably already know if you're watching this video. When I first finished Arc, I was pretty confident that I knew what it was trying to say. Then, due to a series of events, that confidence shattered completely. I still feel like there's something I'm missing, even after all of that research and writing stuff down for this very script. And it's not like I have ever claimed to be a be-all, end-all authority on tokusatsu. I'm not an expert as much as I am an extremely passionate nerd, and even though I've dipped out of the big three, I know I've only really scratched the surface. But the thing is, I love Arc. I do not think anything is ever going to move it from its place as my favorite Ultraman series, and I don't think Yuma's ever not going to be my favorite Ultra host. I really relate to him, to the point that I'm afraid I'm projecting my own mental illness onto him too much, and his journey throughout the series means the world to me. I love the rest of Skip and Shu, and the armor and the action and the music. This show is important to me. So by making this video, I wanted to try and reassure myself that I understand something I love. It kinda worked, I would say. I honestly struggled a lot with writing this script because of that little voice in my head saying that none of it matters and that I'm wrong in some way that I can't figure out. But then I remembered Arc's message as I saw it. It's our connections with others that are vital to us growing and healing. And I'm lucky enough to have many wonderful friends who make every video I make possible by helping me and supporting me. And maybe it's just because it's November, and therefore Thanksgiving season for us Yanks, but I really want to extend a genuine, earnest thank you to everyone who's ever appeared in the credits of my video essays. There is no Laura B Studios without you guys. And I'd also like to extend a genuine thanks to viewers like you. I know I always say that, but I'm being extremely serious here. Every single comment I get, every like or retweet or interaction I get, means the world to me. So thank you for connecting with me in that way. And when I thought about how writing about Arc was another way of connecting with people, the process was a lot easier. So here's to Ultraman Arc, a show I randomly decided to start just a few days after it premiered because it seemed like the thing to do. You never know what shows are going to change the trajectory of your brain until they happen, so I'm glad I gave this one a chance, because that's very much what it did. And every aspect of it was something I loved enough to write a whole video essay about. So keep using your imagination, keep trusting people, and keep running. You've got people in your corner, and as long as you've got them by your side, you can face any darkness. So now that I have been more vulnerable than I usually am in these video essays, thank you very much for watching. Thank you, very sincerely. Thank you a lot. In the description below, you can find the link to my Linktree that has everywhere you can find me online, including my shirt store. I do have some Arc designs up, so if any of those catch your fancy, feel free to cop. And it also has a link to my Buy Me a Coffee, so after all that blabbering, if you want to give me $5, you sure can. I will be back in December with another cover, and I have a another sort of long-form-ish video planned for December as well. I don't want to say what it is yet, just because I'm only just now, figuring out how I want to organize it, but it's coming, and you will be able to watch it when it's uploaded, so yay! And then as far as video essays go, that's it. That's the last one for 2025. Let's go! It's definitely been a learning experience making these. It's a very different process from making my covers, obviously, but, I'm 4 down, and that's 4 more than I had when I started this year, so I will be back with another long-form scripted video in the year 2026. Crazy to think about. And until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye! That shoe is gay. No, it's not. I can replace after this. I'm not sure what the future lies. I'm not sure. I'm just not sure. In general. Of anything. Ever. He clearly Claire's? Ishido with the Claire's, what piercing will he get? The Yggdrasil is a huge part of my and Kaito's storylines. Bottom text. God has abandoned me. Protagonist grips protagonist? Protagonist. Yes, Dom. Who both. Excuse me? You don't necessarily sassafras. Shanane? Shanane. Oh, writing arc was... I wrote Ultraman arc. Surprise, I wrote it. That's why they had a bug in my walls, because I wrote it myself. My name is Taganori Tsujimoto. I am a 40-something-year-old Japanese man.